Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for May 26, 2025. I'm Dave DuFour here with Baraheni. Coming up, the Knicks pull off an improbable comeback and save their playoff lives. And we're going to talk a little bit about Game 3 in the West and what to look for in Game 4 between the Wolves and Thunder. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S.
Good morning, Dave.
Yeah,
my goodness.
Good night.
Good to have you back, sir.
Yes, good to be back. Good night, Pacers. Wow. Blowing a 20-point lead for the Indiana Pacers. Usually they're the ones mounting the 20-point comebacks, but the Knicks, no strangers to 20-point comebacks, now completing their third 20-point comeback win of the playoffs. They just refuse to do anything easy or normal, including this game. As I thought the game was over. Obviously that would have been a 3-0 lead, series lead for the Pacers. I mean, middle of the second quarter, it's a 20-point game. Mm-hmm. The Knicks just looked flat from the start. The Mitchell Robinson, lineup change didn't really have too much of an impact, although we'll get into that. Wasn't a game-changing lineup change for them, and somehow they pulled this off.
I was getting ready to eulogize the New York Knicks. I was
already thinking Tom Thibodeau, who's coaching the Knicks next year?
Right. Yeah. And that might still be a question after this series. Who knows? But this is not the day to do that. Karl-Anthony Towns just saved the New York Knicks season. He was incredible in the fourth quarter. 20 points in that fourth quarter. And it's funny, it was sort of like an inverse of game one where Aaron Nesmith went off and scored 20 points in that fourth quarter. And now it's Cat in Indiana answering back. The shot making was ridiculous. Like he was hitting these wild 3-point shots. He was driving to the basket against Miles Turner, finishing through traffic, finishing through contact. It's everything you'd want out of Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's interesting because me and you were texting, and I was very, like a disappointed dad, I was disappointed about Karl-Anthony Towns and his defense and the way that he was playing through the first three quarters of this game. Completely changed it in the fourth quarter. And the Knicks changed their defense too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we should talk about that because the Knicks fought through foul trouble. Jalen Brunson had 4 fouls before halftime. Cat had 3. I mean, that was part of the reason why his defense just fell off a cliff, right? I mean, he's constantly put into drop to avoid, the bad fouls, and then he picks up 3. Just a couple of those were just made no sense, right? So put them in this bad position in the first place. But then, they go on this nice run starting about 3 minutes left in the second quarter, and they hit that 3 with Mikal Bridges hit that 3 like 5 seconds left in the half, and you say, oh, okay, well, they found some life, found some energy. But the real thing was Brunson and Cat being in foul trouble the way they were. I mean, Brunson picks up his 5th foul later and has to sit for a long time. But the foul trouble really unlocked their defense because
it actually helped. Yeah.
It helped them. They were able to play an extra defender. So while Brunson was sitting, you had Cat out there leading the offense. I mean, his like you talked about, he had a 30-footer. He had that huge dunk. But the truth was they were causing so much chaos on the defensive end and just had the Pacers. The Pacers offense was just held still in the half court.
This was the most bogged down we've seen the Pacers offense in this series and maybe in these playoffs in general. And I think a part of that is one part, the Pacers and Halliburton being a little indecisive, especially in the clutch. Like you saw him get switches on Karl-Anthony Towns, on Mitchell Robinson, and not really take advantage, not even look to try and score. It was more, let me try to get downhill. Let me create a shot for someone else. Usually in those situations, Halliburton has been pretty good at punishing switches. Wasn't the case here in the fourth quarter. The interesting part about the Knicks defense, and this is sort of my pitch for the Knicks and for Tom Thibodeau, please start Deuce McBride. Just do it. Just rip the Band-Aid off and make him a starter now, make him a permanent starter for next season, because the way this guy guards at the point of attack really enables you to play Karl-Anthony Towns more. And to your point about like staggering Brunson and Cat, I think you could work with both of them being there if you have Deuce, who can cover up some of the issues that Brunson has at the point of attack. Yes, you're still going to be able to put Brunson and Cat in actions, but having that extra guy defensively, I feel like it's the way to go.
Well, it also makes sense for the offensive end because it's another guy who can shoot and dribble and shoot off the dribble, by the way. I mean, Deuce McBride, he is a threat to score. I think I'm with you on that. Moving Mitchell Robinson, I understand it. Like, it made sense. You pair Cat with a big who can operate behind him. Obviously, the offensive rebounding, which was big. I mean, this first quarter, his offensive rebounding, Mitchell Robinson's offensive rebounding, got them extra points. I mean, it just right off the bat. So you saw a little bit of what they were thinking there, but the offensive end becomes the problem when you have Mitchell Robinson out there. And it's just because it takes away driving lanes because he has to operate in the dunker spot. They don't run a ton of pick and roll. Like, it's not like Jalen Brunson's out there throwing lobs to Mitchell Robinson, five times a game. So I think I'm with you. Again, playoffs, man, we need another guy who can shoot and dribble. That is always the story.
It's almost as simple as that. And we'd be remiss to not mention the fact that the Aaron Nesmith ankle thing kind of switched gears. Momentum in a really weird way is fickle in basketball, where one guy goes down. He's obviously essential to their defense, to the Pacers defense. And I think that gave the Knicks a little bit of life to be like, all right, let's try to cut into this lead. You mentioned them ending it by, I think it was like 10 or maybe 13 by the end of the fourth quarter.
13.
And then they were able to answer back. So I think it's moments like these where you look at it and you're like, can the Knicks even up in game 4? Did they find something, or is this just desperation? A team that is looking at their season being lost and answering back in a major way with this huge comeback.
Well, okay, so the Pacers have not shot well at home in the playoffs. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in that.
Weirdly bad in game 3s so far. Yeah.
So they were 5 of 25 from 3. I mean, just couldn't put the ball in the basket, which has not been the problem for them in the first couple games. Obi Toppin was fantastic in that first half, in that big run. And, you think about the speed of the Pacers, that wasn't in this game. Only when Obi Toppin was out there did I actually feel like they were flying around a little bit. And so, I start to wonder, maybe they need, let's find a way to get more Obi Toppin in there. But they just didn't get production from the guys that they've gotten it from. I mean, they got 20 out of Halliburton. Siakam was 17, Miles Turner was 19, but you didn't have a big Nembhard game. I mean, these guys weren't hitting threes. They weren't even really getting the threes up, which is, again, credit to the Knicks defense.
Yeah, it was a credit to the Knicks defense. And I think they found something in that fourth quarter against Halliburton where they were scram switching. And for the folks at home, that's basically like, they were presenting it as if they were going to go into drop coverage with Cat. And then the defender who was guarding Halliburton would pop out and get back onto Halliburton. And so they were kind of disguising what they were doing in a lot of ways. And that confused the Pacers offense a little bit. They also iced out Pascal Siakam in the final 4 minutes of the game. Like, they just said, you're not going to get the ball. We're not going to give you a post mismatch for you to go one-on-one against. That was basically Indiana's only source of offense.
That was part of their problem offensively, to be honest with you. Was going to Siakam in the post too much. Because, again, the Knicks stalled their offense out. And instead of getting out and getting into some actions, they just were looking, a couple times it was Josh Hart. And, Siakam can certainly get you a bucket that way, but your team wasn't going to find rhythm through Pascal Siakam.
Right. You're always better when the ball is flying around. That's exactly how Indy likes to play. They didn't get a chance to do that in the fourth. It was a weird win. This series has been really weird, Dave, the whole time. Game 1 to game 3, just strange.
Well, I mean, there's been some talk. Again, the Mitchell Robinson lineup change. This almost happened against the Celtics. This has been a brewing sort of situation because the Knicks starters have just gotten boat raced in the playoffs. They have not performed well.
They have not been good in the regular season, honestly, either. I mean, we have a couple of writers. James Edwards III has written about the fact that this Knicks starters have not played well, especially in 2025. I believe through over 400 minutes in 2025, they're like minus 1.5 net rating. In the playoffs, they're a minus 8 net rating. So it was due for a change. I guess hats off, credit to Tom Thibodeau for making the change at this point with the desperation involved in this game. I think the thing I want to credit also is Josh Hart, because it's not easy to be the guy and he talked about this pregame where he's like, look, I can't be talking about sacrifice and making the right plays, et cetera, if I'm not willing to come off of the bench. So if it happens, it happens. Credit to him for being that guy. And also in the fourth quarter, huge rebound.
I mean, it's Josh Hart. There was no way Josh Hart was coming off the bench and not making like a huge impact. This is one of the reasons why I do believe it's hard to bench Josh Hart. Because he does all the
little stuff.
Yeah. And Tom Thibodeau, like, you think about the way that he coaches and the way that he coaches his guys, especially like Josh Hart is one of the most Tom Thibodeau guys to ever exist.
Hey, speaking of Thibbs, how about going deeper in your bench? Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright playing 13 and 11 minutes. It actually kind of helped. They're both positive in the game.
That comeback, when Brunson was out, DeLon Wright, gets a bucket. This is the kind of stuff. This is what the playoffs is all about. And I actually think Landry Shamet could be important for them throughout, going through the series, because again, another threat to shoot. It's just going to space the floor out, and especially with Karl-Anthony Towns out there. I don't know. Karl-Anthony Towns took 7 threes in the game.
Yeah,
that is more in line with where he needs to be.
Very important.
Basketball.
Yeah, totally. Look, Game 4 is if Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3 was any description, Game 4 is going to be cinema. The playoffs have just been nuts.
It's been a great playoffs, but the Pacers and Knicks, it's just, I don't know. This has been about what we expected. Two kind of crazy teams that managed to always be in these crazy games, and look at that. You're giving us a show. Guys, stick around after the break. We're going to swing it over to the West, talk Wolves, Thunder, Game 3 a little bit, but we're going to preview Game 4. The Minnesota Timberwolves had a great game plan for Game 3. I'll let you peek into my coach's mind a little bit, if you will. They did the brilliant strategy move of everybody play better, the Thunder play worse, and we make all our shots. It's just saving it for Game 3. Hat tip to the coaching staff up there in Minnesota. It was a great game for them. Again, 143, 101. No team in NBA history has ever lost by 40 points in the playoffs and gone on to win the finals. Are the Thunder just done after that one?
Well, we might see some history this year, We might see some history. Look, you're right in the fact that this was like a perfect game from the Wolves. They shot 50% from 3. Everybody was cooking. Even Terrence Shannon, who I think is really intriguing, provided some offense and some nice defense, like good spark for the rookie. But yeah, from this perspective, it's like OKC had 14 turnovers. That's the most turnovers they've had in this series, right? It was the first time in the postseason that they lost the turnover battle, right? So as soon as they lose the turnover battle, things start to change for the Thunder. It becomes a little bit tricky for them to get things going offensively, and they did not hit their shots as well. So this is another aspect. Also, I do think, to credit the Wolves a little bit here, they did tweak defensively how they were guarding Shai, right? Pick up points, making it so that he doesn't have tons of ball pressure. It's more about picking him up at half court than at full court. So
kept him off the free throw line.
Totally. Kept him out of that mid-range area too. They're like, we're not going to let you get into that mid-range area. We're going to make it tighter for you. We're going to force you to be a playmaker. And that's sort of the game plan that I wanted them to deploy through Game 1 and Game 2 anyways. It was like, go with what Denver has already shown you blueprint-wise works against this team. We'll see if it works for Game 4.
Well, let's talk Game 4 because the expectations that the Wolves are going to shoot it like this, I mean, 20 for 40 from 3 is pretty absurd. I don't expect them to shoot like that, but this is more in line with what I expected coming into the series, where they would have a game here and there, where they have a huge explosion like this. So they are certainly capable of shooting the ball this well. But I think for sustainability's sake, if just their role players will play up to their regular season standard, this series would have felt closer in the first 2 games, right? Like
totally.
This Game 3, everyone kind of breaks out. But if they had just gotten average production, it would have brought them much closer in the first 2. So looking ahead to Game 4, our Bet MGM pick of the day, we're going to wind up picking this game. We're going to pick a winner. But as we're looking at Game 4, like, what do you think is the key for the Timberwolves in Game 4?
I think OKC is going to respond defensively in a major way. right? They're going to do a better job of not allowing guys to get open shots from three, because I think the Wolves kind of played into what OKC likes to do defensively and pinching off and hitting the corners and all that type of stuff to really open up their shot making from three. Mm-hmm. I think OKC will do a little bit better at rotating out, be a little bit crisper. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. They are the best defensive team in the NBA. They will respond defensively. I expect that. How does that match for the Timberwolves what they need? They need a huge game from Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. When things get tight, it's on your stars to make those shots, to make the reads, to make the passes out of certain situations where it might be tighter. The passing window might be a little bit tighter than it was in game 3. It's on them. That's basically, they need to have a really, really good game. And I think it'll be on the stars to determine who ends up winning this one. So it's, can J-Dub pull it out, or is it Randall and Ant?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Thunder, I think when you consider their consistency, especially not turning over the ball, I just can't imagine them having a game as bad as game 3 was. But looking at just how they can get Shai going, because I think that will be important. Ways to get Shai going, I think get Rudy Gobert involved as much as you can. Try to get him in foul trouble, because that actually has been a key for Minnesota opponents all year. When you can get him out of there, their defense is not nearly as good with Naz Reid, and especially when it's Reid and Randall, even though Randall has been better in the playoffs. But I think just trying to draw Gobert out and get him involved in as many actions as possible early on be huge. I mean, you look at the difference for the Knicks. You know, it was a positive for them when their guys got in foul trouble. But, you know, if you can clean up the paint for Shai, you know, your life gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, the strategy for Minnesota is don't turn the ball over and don't foul. And if you lose one of those things, it's going to be a lot harder for you to pull off a win against OKC. So I think the turnovers, I was talking to John Kay about this week, but like he believes that this turnover situation is not something they're going to overcome. They're usually a turnover prone team. The fouls, the defense, the mistakes that they can make on that end, that's much more fixable. So can they just not foul? Right? Can they just be clean with the way that they're guarding Shai? Chris Finch mentioned it post game. He's like, hey, we actually played a pretty clean game against SGA, and go figure, we win by 40. Right?
There was a great photo or a still taken from SGA on a drive where all 3 of the Wolves defenders are leaning away from him, and he's making a face like he's getting fouled. I just thought that actually demonstrated kind of the way that they guarded in that game. They were doing a little bit of the Matador defense toward him to avoid the contact.
Olay defense, right?
Yeah. So, and then I think that for the Thunder, you got to get more out of Chet and you got to get more out of Jalen.
Totally.
J-Dub, you just, again, 13 points. That's, it was an early night for them. But you just need scoring.
They will be well rested for game 4. Let's just say that they will be very well rested for game 4. I expect this one to be close. I think this will be the game in the series that determines it all, right? If Minnesota somehow wins this game in game 4, now we're looking at, okay, the Wolves have figured something out. They're heading to OKC in a 2-2 series, and they only have to win 2 more games. If OKC wins this, obviously they're up 3-1 and they're 1 win away from the NBA Finals. And, we're talking about something differently here. But I think this is the game, if you're watching from a casual fan perspective, where you're like, okay, this will determine it all. Game 4 usually is that.
It's funny because we kind of present these, both series were 2-0.
Yeah.
Game 3 won by the team that was down, right? So 2-1. And we both, or we tend to have this thing where we kind of have a sigh of relief. Oh, okay. Well, hey, we're not going to get swept. Truth is, if you go down 3-1, you're likely to lose too. So you need to have that same sort of desperation in game 4. And this is where I do think Minnesota, I just haven't seen that from them, the desperation basketball, but that has equaled winning. That's one of these things that you do see from the teams that win championships.
Let me ask a question back at you. Okay. So obviously 2 teams right now down 2-0. They just won their game 3s this weekend, right? Who do you give a better chance of winning game 4? Knicks or Wolves?
Well, there's our Bet MGM pick for game 4. I think the Wolves are going to win game 4. It feels like maybe they took the lids off the basket, so to speak. These guys have, Dante DiVincenzo essentially just forgot how to shoot the basketball over the last 6 weeks. And so, for these guys to see so many shots go in, I think that has to have an effect on morale.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm going to go with the Knicks. I for some reason, I feel weirdly about this series that it's just it's a strange series, right?
Yeah.
The road team won the first 2 games, and now we got a home team that's lost their road 3. It's a strange series. There's comebacks. There's outlier performances.
Yeah.
I think there's a world where the Knicks pull it off and tie it going to New York.
Pacers Knicks is very close, right? Like look at
it's
the
very,
first 2 games
close.
of the series. It was pretty close. So I'm with you. I think that is a closer series as far as the talent matchup
than OKC Minnesota. Sure.
But I think the Wolves. I think the Wolves. I think they're in good shape. I think they're in good shape. They play well at home. I mean, it's such a funny cliche to bring up, but they really do. Yeah. Those guys shoot so much better at home. So
what's the thing they say? The series doesn't start until a team wins on the road or whatever, right?
Yeah. Who do you have game 4?
Oh, I'm going to take OKC. Yeah, I think I'm going to take OKC.
You think it's over?
I don't think it's over, but I think it's over. It's just, look, I think this was a really, really great, perfect performance for Minnesota. I just trust the team that's won 68 games and looked as dominant as they did through game 1 and game 2 to answer in a way that makes them a finalist. That's basically what I'm banking on a pretty good horse here. You know what I mean?
Right,
in terms of winning this game. It's not like I'm providing an upset happening or something like that, but OKC.
Okay, well, we'll find out. That's going to do it for the show, folks. Thank you guys for listening. For Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.